Good afternoon, everyone. My name is An Ngor and I'm the Community Lead from StartSpace at State Library Victoria. I just wanted to let you know that you're currently in the Cultural Connections and Entrepreneurship session. Today we're talking about culture, and I thought it'd be remiss of me not to really acknowledge the First Nations people of Australia. So I just wanted to really set the scene properly and really acknowledge the traditional owners of the land around Australia. In discussions with the panelists, we found that we've been represented by people from 4 different states and territories. So I just wanted to really pause and acknowledge our elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that to First Nations people of the places where everyone's dialing in from. So we've got viewers from all parts of the world. So I'll also acknowledge that to First Nations people from around the world. Today we're talking about culture. And so I'm very, very proud to be able to announce the panel and introduce them all. The format will be just lightning talk. So each of our panelists will get up and speak for 5 minutes about the topic, and then we'll throw to a bit of a discussion and then involve the audience as well through our Slido platform. So as you're listening, just start thinking about questions that you'd like to ask the panel, and we'll feed them through to the panel and really have a great conversation around that intersection of culture and entrepreneurship. So just wanting to firstly just quickly introduce the group. We have Michaela Jade, who's the founder and CEO of InDigital, Andrew Miles, the CEO and co-founder of the Chinese Australian Millennial Project, China Australia rather, Luz Restrepo, who's the co-founder of Migrant Women in Business, and Devarshi Desai, YouTube superstar, co-founder of Internash. So we're just moving into our lightning talk presentation. So just wanted to throw it over initially to Michaela.
Thanks very much, Anne. So I'm a Cabral woman from the Darug-speaking nations of Sydney, and I run a company called InDigital, and we started InDigital using augmented reality storytelling to tell Indigenous stories about Australia. So the big idea was, imagine if you could hold your phone up to a cultural place and our traditional owners could share our stories in our language and our law at the right time, at the right place, for the right reasons, and also earn some economic income for the community by doing so through augmented reality. I set about doing that in 2012, and now lead a team of 6 people, 5 who are First Nations people living in rural and remote Australia who work for the company, running a program called InDigital Schools, which empowers school kids from all around Australia and hopefully the world next year to learn cutting-edge digital skills in 4th Industrial Revolution technologies through a cultural lens. And I've been on this journey in a roundabout way. So my actual career is a park ranger. I've been a park ranger for 21 years in the Great Barrier Reef, in Ningaloo Reef, in the Pilbara region, and in Kakadu, where I grew my company, and also in the ACT. And I had to learn augmented reality through the internet. So I became a massive YouTube stalker and found some people internationally who taught me how to make augmented reality during the night after I'd gone and been a park ranger during the day. I learned during the night how to create augmented reality. And we created our first app in digital storytelling, which went very, very well, ended up at the United Nations talking about our application, and was overwhelmed by the response of First Peoples who wanted to work in this medium. And the clincher, though, was it was very expensive to build the technology and very expensive to create content. So it was about $8,000 a piece, which is completely unaffordable and unscalable. So 3 years ago, we partnered with Microsoft, and 2 years ago, we partnered with Telstra Purple, and we completely reframed the way that we develop augmented reality. And we started using artificial intelligence to do all the hardcore coding parts, which meant that our peoples were free to just bring themselves and their creativity to augmented reality content production. So today we can work with teachers and communities and teach them in around 6 hours how to create augmented reality, and they can see their own creations immediately through our platform and application on country, in language, sharing cultural law.
Amazing. Thanks, Michaela. Now just passing over to Andrea.
大家好, hello everyone. My name is Andrea Miles and I'm the CEO and co-founder of the China Australia Millennial Project. Essentially what we bring is Chinese and Australian millennials together to build projects. So this is not a competition, but it's a collaboration. I started this project basically out of a sense of frustration. I think is the best renewable energy resource is frustration, seeing a problem and just tackling it yourself. What I saw was two amazing nations, China and Australia, who are quite different but incredibly complementary. And I couldn't see the sorts of collaborations that I thought we could and should be doing together. I started this back in 2015. And at that time, we were really just coming off that huge resources boom. And a lot of the discussion between Australia and China was just around selling expensive dirt to, you know, one of the most incredible nations in the world, and us getting cash, and then talking about how deeper friends we were. And I thought, if you have a transaction or a transactional relationship with people, that's not really a friend that you rely on when the chips are down. You know, you need a deeper sense of relationship where you build things in partnership and in collaboration, and it's not just people, passing in the night. So I built a program which brings together young people, like the best and brightest in Australia and China. And it's a 100-day program which starts by flying all the Australians over to China to meet their Chinese counterparts. We basically run around the innovation ecosystem in China for 5 days together. So we've done Shanghai and Beijing as part of those explorations, including going into Alibaba's headquarters and, peeking behind the curtain. And then the teams, each team is mixed with Chinese and Australians on each team. The teams have 100 days to hack an industry challenge together and build a solution which tackles both markets. So which takes advantage of, say, the size and scale of China, and might take advantage of the niches that Australia has perfected, and putting those together to create something which is brand new. So it's kind of like, what if Jack Ma from Alibaba and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook got together and built something from scratch together? What sort of thing would a team like that come up with? If it's from Jack Ma, chances are it's pretty ethical. If it's from Mark Zuckerberg, ... But our program encourages people to build social businesses. So they are generally for-profit startups, but they have a social aim. It's no good to me to build a new business that creates more problems than it solves. That's not really innovative in my view. So at the conclusion of our program, at day 100, we fly all the Chinese participants down to Australia. And so the teams have 2 moments to actually see each other face to face and reconnect after that 100-day sprint. And it's a big celebration. There's a very fast-paced re-ideation of their ideas. So they're collaborating online for 100 days, but everything's better face to face. So they really get stuck in during that final 5-day sprint. And then on the very final day, they have to pitch their solution to the members of our business community who gave them the business challenge in the first place. So they're, up on stage pitching their brand new idea in front of executives from companies like Alibaba, Wesfarmers, who run Coles and Bunnings and so on. And like universities, some of Australia's universities are in there too, David Jones, a lot of companies that really see the opportunity within the Australia-China relationship. And for me, it was really important to build something that was optimistic. Australia and China are pretty different countries. We have different political systems. We often talk about how different our cultures are. But if I can tell you, like, the one secret source of global collaboration, it's finding shared value together first. What do we both care about? And then from there, you can start to discuss the differences in culture and that sort of rich, an amazingness of cultural differences. But establishing that actually human beings in China and human beings in Australia, human beings around the world, we all want tomorrow to be better than today, and we want to kind of contribute to that. So I've been running the business since 2015. I very firmly believe in global collaboration, and even as tricky as things are right now in the world, we are only going to solve our challenges by believing that we are human beings and we can collaborate worldwide.
Thanks, Andrea. As a multi-hat Chinese Australian who was a migrant, let's segue to migrants with Luz.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to tell a story of 20 years in 5 minutes. Let's try to do it. I am an entrepreneur from 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I had 35 years old, and I was sick to follow instructions and to see that in a company, the creativity, sometimes they cut our creativity because it's not in our position description or there is no resources into the organization. At 35 years old, I started my own business in my own country with my money, a privileged woman who has money, connections, knows how to do it because I knew my environment and I just needed the creativity to start. And probably in 10 years' time, I developed a beautiful organization, successful. And one of the things that I got in that time was I realized I have a voice and I could speak my mind. And speaking my mind in a country where there is no freedom of speech. One day, I was becoming an asylum seeker and arrived to a country where I couldn't speak the language, where I didn't know anyone, where I didn't have the money because I lost in the process. And I just needed to understand how I was going to pay my bills, to put money in our dinner table. This now I'm going to pass to a quick presentation that show you a little bit my journey as an entrepreneur in Australia. For us, it's clear when we are, the second birthday, the day that we arrived to a new country. In my free English classes in community centers, I found women like me. Lack of English and lack of confidence. The only difference that they have to me was that they were long-term employee, long-term settled, full of domestic violence and social issues. And 6 months after, I was teaching them English. And my question was, why I am teaching them English? And probably in that moment, I understood that I was not just an entrepreneur, I was also a leader. And I needed to start to stop to feeling a victim, to start to feeling that I could navigate, not just for myself, for them. And that together we could do something wonderful. And this is when we realized that we could make and sell craft around Melbourne in free markets. And quickly we start to learn English by trying to sell our goods. And quickly we start to feel like we belong to this society, having friends from different cultures. And slowly, we start also to realize that we could teach each other and support each other. There are people who has better sales skills than others, and there are others who has better products than others. That we just start to share our knowledge and experience and become a family from 25 different countries. And 7 years ago, Australian women joined to the project and an organization called Sister Wars Start. Sister Wars Incorporated, tax-deductible organization. As an entrepreneur with no capacity, the only way to start in another country is as a charity. And this charity started, And we start to jump from make craft to make products that we can make in teams that are sustainable and ethically, and we can cover a lot of women and with a fair payment. 7 years after, in May last year, I resigned from my own organization because I am a good entrepreneur, but I know I am no good manager. With 20 employees, $1.5 million, $400 to 700 women supported from 70 different countries. I realized that the charity support is a good way to start in a country, but it's not the way to make sustainable the new creation of jobs. This is why 4 months ago, I started a new enterprise, this one with a business structure. And the idea is to give to migrant women in business the same capacity building that I received 7 years ago. I strongly believe that it's women's time, and women together, we are going to change the world. It's time to care for the environment. It's time to care for the communities. It's time to do business with sustainable way. Work empowers women.
Great, thank you, Luz. And just throwing to our final panelist, Devarshi from Internash.
Thank you so much for having me. Lovely hearing all these stories. So my name is Devarshi Desai, and I am a co-founder of Internash. I came to Australia about 3 years ago. So July 2017 is when I came to Australia. And before I came to Australia, I had a very different perception of how life of an international student is when they're studying in Australia. In my head, it was like, if I'm going to a university in Australia, getting a part-time job would be a cakewalk. And because I have a part-time job, I should be making enough money and I'll be partying. I'll have the best possible life in a developed country as an international student. And because I've studied in a university, I have an Australian degree, getting a full-time job should be like really easy. And soon after I came here, I realized that was not the reality. And primarily the reason why I had this perception, which was not very accurate, was because I couldn't find a lot of stories of international students telling how they built whatever they built, how they got a job. And that's why we started creating very simple videos answering very basic questions. Questions like how to find accommodation, or how to find a part-time job, or even how to use PTV, for example. So, and we had no idea. We did not think that this would reach out to millions of viewers. We did not know that we would build a community. And that's why we just kept creating videos. And one thing that we are very clear about, our mission at Internash is to build community for international students and to give most transparent information possible to international students in Australia and to the students who are planning to come to Australia. And the reason was very simple. The problems that I faced, I did not want other people to face the same problems. So soon after we started creating a lot of videos, we started attracting hundreds and thousands of viewers on our YouTube channel. And then we realized that we need a community. Because once I know how to find accommodation, for example, but I have so many other questions. And rather than us answering all the questions, if there is a community of international students that can feed off each other's questions and answers, that is going to be more sustainable. And I'm not from a tech background. I don't know how to build an app or a tech product. So the simple thing is to use the resources that we already have. And that's why we built a Facebook group. And today we have almost 25,000 members in this group specifically for international students. And we have successfully built that community. And the reason why I think all of this was possible was because, and this is for every international student out there, that we all have to dream big. but we have to start from small steps, all of us. And I think as international students, we are better equipped to solve problems. Primary reason is that we come to Australia, we get to know the culture here. We get to know how people here talk or converse with each other. How is the work culture here? But the additional advantage that we have, for example, I have, is that I come from India and I understand the problems that India faces. And the businesses and startups solve those problems. So we have that perspective as well. And almost every international student would have that. So they have this perspective of spotting different problems that international students are facing. And because we are the new generation, we understand technology better, we understand problems better. That's why I think that this whole cultural knowledge and this new knowledge that we are gaining about Australian culture by becoming an international student, I think international students can solve these problems a lot better. Now, honestly, when we think of solving a problem, I wouldn't recommend to solve a problem for 1 million people. The first thing that every international student can do today is solve a problem for you and your friends, the problem that all of you are facing. And the moment you have done that, then you know how to better the solution. And then you can scale it up to other people. So the main thing is to dream big, but start small. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for those thoughts, Vashi. And now we'll just move on to, I guess, a more interactive question and answer portion of our session. And just a reminder to everyone out there, we're using the Slido platform. So if you want to ask any questions for our panel, just slido.com and then the Future Founders Festival hashtag to ask us there. I just want to open it up, I guess, at this intersection of culture and entrepreneurship. As I mentioned earlier, I'm from the Asian Australian community, and there's this, I guess, conversation around, dual identities and the bamboo ceiling, and, do you need to be someone that you're not to be successful? Do you need to be pretend that you're from a different mindset? Just throwing it out to the panel and just jump in. What are some? We'll start negative and then we'll get positive by the end of it, I promise. What are some of the challenges, the key cultural challenges that you encountered when you were starting your businesses? Who would like to go first?
Well, I can go first. So I think, and this could be, I've seen a lot of international students going through the problem, is that first thing is the feeling that we're not enough. That is the major problem. And that is very obvious. If I'm not comfortable with English, then that is the problem with confidence that I think a lot of international students go through. And so that is the first problem, is that to make sure that international students should feel confident, and the job is of international students specifically, that the things that they should go out and make, for example, Australian friends. A lot of international students may end up making friends of their community, and that is obvious because that is where we find comfort in an entirely new country. But I think the primary problem is that we can solve together is about the confidence and feeling that that international students can achieve a lot of things if they put their mind to it, and they basically can do anything they want.
Andrea, with that intercultural lens there as well, is that something that you've seen? Is that one of the challenges?
Absolutely. I think with me, my challenges, being a white Australian, I get a lot of privilege when it comes to just the doors that I can open, and so on. So where I found barriers amongst white Australia, which is a lot of the leadership here, is the fact that I'm a woman. So the way I kind of think about it is, for my white male counterparts, they might have doors opening for them and I'm fumbling around in the dark just feeling a wall, So the way that I have found to overcome that, and bearing in mind it's the easiest for me to overcome given that I'm a white person in a very white Australia, is applicable to our entrepreneurs inside of our program as well. So I've actually learned this from taking a look at the 300 graduates that we have and figuring out what is the trigger to be able to activate them to become entrepreneurs and successful ones. And it's three things. Devarshi spoke to it just a second ago. So you need a network. You cannot have a fantastic idea without a network to execute it, to amplify it. And I'm an introvert myself. I don't like networking. I like being at home, with my cats, but I have to challenge myself to network with people outside of my current sphere. So that includes, the way that I worked on that was just attending events with the sorts of people that were going to be important to my business. Just turn up, show up, be in the room, challenge yourself to speak, have 3 conversations that are meaningful. It can be as simple as that. So you need to have that network. You need to have skills as well. It's not enough to just have a big network of friends, but no skill set to actually offer anybody. It doesn't mean that you have to have every single skill set to be able to run a business. Nobody is perfect, but a team can be. So you can identify your own deficiencies and network and grab people into your team that can build a team that has a lot of strength in it. So you might have, someone with a particular technical skill, someone who's great at running businesses, somebody who's really good with creative energy and coming up with ideas. Pull all those different people into a particular team. And finally, confidence. So you need skills, networks, and confidence to execute. You really have to be able to make decisions and act, because if you just have skills and if you just have great networks, but you're never going to make a decision and start, you're never going to go anywhere. So for me, what I've learned from our 300 entrepreneurs from China and from Australia is that if you find harmony and balance these 3 things, so if you've got a deficiency in your networks, but great skills and great confidence, build up your networks. Find a way that all those things can work together, and then you stand the best chance. Because sometimes if you can't open the door yourself, one of your networks can. And that's what I've done. When I've found those barriers, I find someone else who's got the door open, and I get them to bring me through. And I think that's really important for international students when you're in a new country.
Michaela, any thoughts on cultural challenges that you've faced as you've started to, I guess there was that piece around having to self-educate in a totally new sphere, but with that cultural lens, were there any challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think there's no such thing as an entrepreneur or a tech startup person that hasn't had challenges. We all have challenges, and there's no such thing as an overnight success. Being an Indigenous woman in remote communities operating in 4th industrial revolution technologies has been a massive barrier to getting support. But the way I overcame that was persistence and building a minimum viable product, because it was very clear in my head what I was doing. But trying to explain a technology like augmented reality or the 3-dimensional internet is a very esoteric kind of concept for most people. Yeah, so until they could experience it, they didn't understand what I was talking about. But once I developed the minimum viable product, I could show them. And it was our shitty first draft. It wasn't where our vision was, but it was the first step that people could play with and see and experience and understand. And that was the key to unlocking all the support. That and speaking up about structural inequality and how hard it is to be an Indigenous female in technology. There's not very many of us in Australia, and often we're the only ones in the room, and that needs to change.
Yeah. I think in a lot of sessions that I've been part of so far, it's really been around, there's people from certain cultural backgrounds that kind of elevate this need for perfection, elevate for, not speaking out first because you might be wrong. And then other personas will just take the space, take the structural power there, because they'll just run with all the confidence they have with their 60% they think they're right and just get into that conversation. So it's that nuance between knowing the strengths and the weakness of cultural challenges and opportunities. Laz, you mentioned a few things about, the differences, I guess, between your situation before and after arriving in Australia. Anything else around that cultural piece that you've discovered for yourself and all the women that you work with?
All the time. I said all the time that when you don't have money, you need to make friends. Yeah, but to make friends in another country with another culture is a huge challenge. We also need to understand that we also come from monocultures. It's not just that many of Australians live just in the main street community. We also came from main street communities and come here to do empathy with other cultures. To make friends from different cultures is a challenge that has two parts. My part is how to get my confidence up in another people's country, how to speak with confidence with another people's language. This is my challenge. The challenge of the other people is to do empathy with myself, yeah, and to put your shoes if you were in our countries, speaking our language, how you will deal with us. And probably is when we need to open the heart and the non-rational part and to start to empathize with others. Yeah. And I think so the multicultural entrepreneurship starts when we start to respect the difference and start to listen other ways to do the same thing, other ways to see the world, the same world with different eyes.
Thanks, Laz. Just a reminder to the viewers that you can ask any questions to the panel through that slido.com portal. Just flipping from, I guess, the structural problems that a lot of people that aren't part of the dominant, I guess, narrative face. What have been the opportunities? What, I guess, the audience out there are, a lot of them would be international students, international student alumni, some migrant founders, or just people with a passing interest in the entrepreneurship world. Let's go inspiration. What have been moments where your superpower or your lived experience has given you insight, grit, and the ability to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do? Michaela, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I think being able to walk between two worlds has been really important in my journey. And there's not just two worlds. There's so many multiple dimensions to being an Aboriginal or a Torres Strait Islander person in Australia. But one of them is being able to, I was lucky to have a great family and a great education, and I'm using that to my maximum opportunity to help other people that haven't had the same opportunities as me to have a great education, to teach them how to be entrepreneurs, to teach them how to see themselves in future technologies. The other part of that is being able to walk between life in regional and remote Australia and life in city Australia. And I've spent 21 years working in regional and remote communities as a park ranger. I know deeply what it's like to live and be the only person for 55,000 hectares. It's hard. And I also know the responsibilities that come with being a person that can use technology in those communities as well. So helping to support people that do have capability in the communities and building the capability of other people in the communities.
Would anyone else like to jump in with any thoughts or inspirations about an example where your cultural background gave you an edge, an opportunity?
Honestly, the opportunities that I'm having right now wasn't possible unless I came here as an international student and I did not have the cultural experience that I had. And I think that is, again, that is with every international student out there. So, for example, what we are doing with International, that is to provide more international student stories. The reason why we want to do that, so that the more people it reach out to, they would believe that this is something that they can do as well. the more international student stories that are celebrated out there, the more international students would know that this is something that is a lot more achievable. So if we just talk about opportunities, I think personally to me, I have this opportunity of creating with International, reaching out to these many people or building a community has only happened because I was receptive enough and I wanted to take action to change the things that I personally was facing as an international student.
Any thoughts, Luz or Andrea?
After you, Liz.
Thank you, Andrea. So the question is around superpowers, our superpowers.
What's your superpower?
And how to take advantage of our superpowers. I think so. We as entrepreneurs, as a leader, do very well with that. I think so. We are privileged people, as Micaela says. When we have the education and we have the tools, we must to change the world. Yes, we are. So I think so. I am very aware of my privilege and how to help others to help themselves. I would say that superpowers connect people because the knowledge is just connect with opportunities. Superpowers, I know how to enterprise, how to develop enterprises. And I think this world after this pandemic is showing that the way to generate more jobs is generating new enterprises connected with the new realities of the world. And the other one is how to work with migrant women with low level of literacy, numeracy, and digital skills. Migrant women with low level of literacy are completely isolated. So we need to find digital ways to connect them. And I think so this is where my superpowers are working now.
Any final thoughts on that point, Andrea?
Nice. Yeah, so from where I sit in terms of these challenges, I feel like my role is as someone who can open doors. You know, I was born here in Australia. I get a lot of benefit of the doubt simply because of the color of my skin and the accent, you know, that I have. So for my community, it's been really important for me not to just, put myself forward, right? I'm the CEO, I'm going to go and do this. It's actually not about me. It's about the community of people that I can put into the spaces, the leadership roles, the conversations that ordinarily they would just look to someone like me. And so for me, and to put my money where my mouth is, anyone who is watching, if you want to just add me on LinkedIn and say hello and just tell me what you're doing, let's have a chat. Let's see what I can do, because I know I've been an international student over in China. And so it's not the same thing as being an international student here, but I kind of understand how tricky and how lonely it can be sometimes. And sometimes it takes a while to make a local friend. So if you like, just say hello, and then you've got a LinkedIn connection. Hey, how about that? I know a lot about Australia. I know a little bit about China, but I can certainly, give you 2 cents worth of advice. So for me, I know I've spoken for a long time, but to me, it's actually more important to listen and be quiet.
They're just listening out for the background for Andrea's phone to just start blowing up with notifications. For
oh my God!
At
no,
present.
I'm just kidding.
I guess that, Luz?
Can I just add something important that Andrea says, because it's something that we as a migrants in this country, yes, we need to make Australians friends. It's key that we move our network outside of our own communities and connect as many possible with Australian friends. Now we need to get Andrea LinkedIn.
Yeah, just do it. Like bail Australians up and make them your friends. Like, I am so envious of extroverts who are able to simply do that, make that first step. But, Australians, if I can generalize, maybe we won't necessarily make that first step because we don't know how sometimes, or we're just not thinking about it. But if you make that first step, we'll respond. We will, or at least a fraction of us will, reach out to 10 people, you get 2 back. That's great odds, but make sure you actually do it.
But with our lack of confidence, you need to do the first step.
I know, but you know what? It's not generally going to happen. It should. Trust me, it should.
So we need to encourage all of us. Yeah, agree.
I just want to interject there, because I think moving on to misconceptions about culture and background, like there is this concept of Australia and what an Australian should or should not look like. And that's something that I would really like to challenge, because I was born in Malaysia, moved here when I was 6, and so I sound like this. But for a time in my life, I was working in the Philippines, working in Singapore. And when I say I'm from, the first line in Tagalog I learned was, I'm Australian, I'm Chinese, but I'm from Australia. Because there was always this, you don't look like Chris Hemsworth. You don't look like you're from Summer Bay, home and away. And so, but there's this beautiful, nuanced opportunity for all Australians. We have the oldest recorded civilization. We've got our newest arrivals. Why don't we use that lovely eclectic mix of what we have to our benefit? And I guess just moving more into the misconceptions around culture and entrepreneurship. What are these misconceptions? I'm just flagging one there that, what is it? What does it mean to be Australia? We could spend hours on that. But at this intersection of culture and entrepreneurship, what are some misconceptions that people might have, and how do we really fight and combat them?
I think something from a Koori perspective is that we want to be identified by our country and by our peoples first, and the first names that we had for this place and our places and our nations of people, of which there's more than 300 nations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here. So when I say I'm a Cabra girl from a Darug speaking nation, I will say that first. I will say that internationally as well, and we will speak like that to other international First Peoples as well, to respect their cultures first. I think we've seen the desire for other Australian people who are non-Aboriginal people to express that through the Australia Post conversation that was happening last week about acknowledging First Peoples countries on our letters when we send them.
Wow. I missed that conversation, but that's a perfect way to show that. I was born on Darug land, actually, but now I'm in Eora with the Gadigal people. If anyone is an international student, I would really encourage you to look up the traditional owners of the land where you live here in Australia, and bear in mind that white people have been in Australia for literally the blink of an eye. It's such a small amount of time in comparison to just how long traditional owners have been here, have been innovating, have been coming up with incredible ideas, meaning that Australia is as beautiful a place as it is. So look that up. That's your number one thing to do.
And just on that point of trade as well, I mean, there's recorded history about the Macassans and the First Nations people having trade prior to European settlement. There's this rich history of migrants and First Nations people working alongside, and it's all laid out in the histories of this land. Devarshi, any misconceptions that you've come across, and how do we fight them? Just on mute.
Sorry, I think that's a really good question as to like what misconception, because misconception goes both the ways. For example, whether Australia is safe, and if I am sitting in India, I have no idea of what life is, or let's say in Canberra, I don't know what life is in Canberra. Like even today, I don't know what life is in Canberra, right? Because I've never lived there. So those are the things. And a lot of times we just believe on a couple of articles that we have read online. And that is where the misconception comes from. Or we have heard one person's bad experience. Or let's say like I have met somebody from X country and that person did not treat me well. And that's how I will look at that country. And it even when we don't think rationally, that's what happens. I think misconception is a lot to do with just not to have enough knowledge about that specific community, country, or that specific place. So I think the primary way to combat this misconception is to actually dive into that knowledge and understand more. And for example, like if I have misconception as to like, just because I have an accent, I will not be treated well by Australians. And that is a fear that I genuinely had when I came here. And what if, like, they stop me, I'm brown and I keep a beard, and like that's why, what if they stop me, or they have misconception of an idea of such kind of people. So I think the best way to just deal with these people, this whole ideology of misconception, is just to be as natural as possible and try to be hungry for knowledge.
I will add to Devashi. I think so. We all as a humans need to show our vulnerability and try to be more open with what we are feeling. I think misconceptions are around when we can't articulate properly our idea. People think that we are not smart enough. And we as a migrant, we need to prove ourselves all the time, because we are not going to find the correct ways to say the stuff. There is a misconception there when you find a migrant with a strong accent. Yes, you can't underestimate them. Misconceptions, I think so, we all are in a permanent way. It's a learning process. And we try to isolate ourselves in our comfort zones and not try to explore other new things. And this is something that is clear. We need to be open to be learning about Australia, what's going on in Australia, what is important for Australia, what Australian likes, because sometimes as we are connected is what's going on in our countries. This is something that is in our side, but it's also in the side of all of us. Not sure. I think so. It's enough for the time.
Michaela, you sounded like you were about to jump in earlier.
Maybe I might have forgot what I was going to say there.
No, that's okay. Just wanted to offer that. Just with the mindful of the time that we have left, what's missing? Like, what is it? Gov? Is it markets? Is it studies? How do we better this? Luz is ready to go. Luz is ready to go. We've got 7 minutes, Luz. What do we need to really back diverse founders? Your one dream.
I can start there because I have a big dream and a big ask. I think that for First Peoples to be involved in designing the fourth industrial revolution, we need access to the tools. And there's a lot of community that don't simply have access to the internet, or don't have access to computers, or even don't have access to mobile technologies. And that's complete inequality. To be able to shape our futures and our economic futures, we need access to the devices, and we need people to stop being racist about what we do with devices when we get them. And I think that's really important. We can't move people unless they have the tools to do the job.
I think we need to raise our voice as a leaders, because Australia need to listen new voices, and we need to stand up in power roles, and we need to support each other to make this happen, because there is a lot of there is an inequality if we don't create more jobs opportunities for vulnerable people. And I am going to talk for the people that I care about, that is around migrant women. That is one of the big unemployable people in this country, and we need to find ways to support them to overhead their barriers and move forward. Yes, when you have a happy mom, you have a happy family, and you build a happy future.
Devashi, Andrea?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everybody that is everything that is said on this panel. And I think personally, this is something that I believe in a lot, and that just goes out for every diverse group out there. And that is that once we know that something is achievable, then that thing starts happening a lot more. Once we got to know that somebody ran a marathon under 2 hours, that was the first time ever. Then another 6 people did that within 4 months of time, and that was never done before. So once we know more migrants, more just international students or any diverse group in that manner, once we know more stories that, oh, that person came from China and then built this, or this person came from Colombia and did this, or that person did not have any privilege of traditional white Australian and grew up with all these difficulties and then made this, and that gives that acts as fuel for a lot more people in those communities to see that, oh, this is possible and we can do this. So I think if the very simple thing is just to like put out more stories, more festivals like this, more diverse panels like this, and I think that's the way to go.
Any final thoughts, Andrea?
Diversity is strength, and there is no innovation without diversity. So in Australia, migrants don't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt that people who were born here get. But that doesn't mean that it is not possible. It's just that it hasn't happened yet. So I think going in, the first thing in any entrepreneurial thing anywhere in the world is that you start to talk about your idea as if it is already happening, as if this is a fait accompli, this is going to happen, and I have the confidence and the backing that we're going to do this. So would you like to come on board? Often in Australia, we want to see, so much proof before we back somebody. But if you have the confidence to be able to just say, this is what I'm doing, and would you like to come on board? It doesn't have to have happened already. The best ideas haven't happened yet, and we need more of those fresh ideas here in Australia. How boring would this country be if there was one type of person and they all had control over all of the ideas? Right? Nobody wants to live in that country. So we need migrants to share their ideas and bring them into focus. And you're going to be able to do that by looking around you and making sure that the people that are supporting you are diverse. So that means old, young, able, disabled, from migrant communities, not from migrant communities, but you need a team around you. You need to build your family here in Australia that is going to help you become a great entrepreneur.
Great. And in really quick summary, there's so much to be done, but I guess what I'm hearing is be kind to yourself, have a sense of who you are, and then put yourself out there, no matter how scary it is, to just meet different people and partner, I guess, with people that you might not have had the confidence to prior, to self-educate, to represent, and to really like build this land, and harness, I guess, the opportunities afforded to us. Just mindful of time, just wanted to once again thank our amazing panel, and thank everyone who's viewing presently, to Devarshi, Luz, Andrea, and Michaela. Thank you for your time, and sharing your hearts and your stories around, I guess, who you are. Thanks once again.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.